Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg, where we're playing a little Secret of Evermore. Secret of Evermore was not the first game for Hanging with Mangg. That was Diablo 3, but I think Secret of Evermore was like the second or third or something. It's been on the channel quite a few times. And I've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter Wilds. I put about 75 hours into it. And I hit Hunter rank 100, which I think is the last one that you get an achievement for. And so that's basically I've done everything in the game at the moment. So outside of playing co-op now occasionally with some friends or with Lego on Two Brothers Play, pretty much good for now. It is a fantastic game. I think it's the best Monster Hunter. My current favorite. I don't really have any reason to go back to World. I didn't really like Rise, and I wouldn't really want to go back to any other older Monster Hunter. So yeah, I'd say it's the best. Really solid game. So I started playing Secret of Evermore because recently we covered it on Archipelago on Two Brothers Play. It's a really good game. It's just, I think it would be a lot better with the randomizer if I just knew it inside and out. So I'm just trying to get back in the swing of things. Anyways. Right. So this week on this channel, Monster Hunter. And you'll notice that I didn't upload that much Monster Hunter, and there were like 3 days in a row where I uploaded solo role manging. And that's because I got a new computer this week, like partway through recording. And for whatever reason, like NVENC encoding on OBS broke. I'm not quite sure the issue with the 5090 or anything, but it just broke. So I had to switch to AV1 during a recording, and then I couldn't merge the different video clips together because I had to transcode AV1 back to a different codec or something. Like, it was a bunch of nonsense, and it took a while. That should be sorted now. So there'll be plenty of Monster Hunter. And obviously I'm done recording it, so there's not that many videos because the actual story is not a massive time sink. A lot of my time spent then was just like hunting random monsters, high rank monsters and stuff, grinding up Hunter rank. So the actual Let's Play is not super lengthy. So yes, solo role manging, Monster Hunter Wilds. Lego and I started playing Split Fiction last night, which is pretty similar to It Takes Two. Very similar kind of gameplay of just like third-person action, and you're constantly bouncing from like segment to segment that mixes kind of different mini games and genres and stuff like that. But doesn't have too much a focus on just like sitting around and doing puzzles or anything like that. Like, it's kind of constantly moving. And apparently a full 100% playthrough of it takes like 15 hours. We couldn't believe that. because we played like 4 hours last night, and we felt like we did a lot. Like we covered a lot of like gameplay. It felt like. If you had said after I played that there was 4 hours left, I'd be like, yeah, that probably sounds about right. But to tell me there's 11 hours left seems just ridiculous. Unless the game really like opens up or just like I don't know. But it also wasn't a cheap game. You know, it's like 45, 50 bucks or something like that. Thankfully, we only had to buy one copy. Because 2 people can play off of one copy with the friend pass. That helps a lot, but yeah. So, yeah, that will continue for the foreseeable future. At least a week and a half or so, if that length is to be believed. I also started recording yesterday Neverwinter Nights. The original campaign, The Wailing Death. Because I was doing Baldur's Gate 1, and I nearly finished Baldur's Gate 1 until I put it on hiatus, which was really dumb. I shouldn't have done that. Because I ended up losing my save file because cloud saves are not enabled in that game by default, which is insane. So, yeah, I lost the whole save completely, and I was right towards the end of it, I was right towards the end of Siege of Dragonspear. Which is the bridge between 1 and 2, and I was all ready to carry my big save file all the way over to Baldur's Gate 2. But I lost it, so that's done. That's great. I mean, I'll still upload all the stuff I have of Baldur's Gate 1 because it was mostly done. But I figured there wasn't much point then in doing another just regular Let's Play of Baldur's Gate 2. Although, it would be kind of interesting to do Baldur's Gate 2 with a full party. Because I've actually never done that. But I decided to just move on to Neverwinter Nights because I've never played it. It seems kind of interesting outside of the horrible graphics. So that's what's all going on there. And over on the Exploring series, part 4 of Black Atom was released. Part 5 tomorrow coming out. And I've already started working on part 6 because it's gonna be a big boy. I don't know how long. I wouldn't be shocked if it was an hour and a half. So that's why I started working on it already. But then part 6 and it will be done and we will move on. Ideally to some shorter stuff, but you know, I just don't really cover shorter stuff. And if I do cover shorter stuff, it's in like a big compilation of other stuff. Anything to make a lengthy video. So I'm certain that if I put out a 20-minute video, people would watch. It just feels wrong to me. I mean, Black Atom has been good, but it is probably time to finish it. If only for my viewer count. So that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot to say about that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Volgan uploads like 15-minute videos every week or so, and he does fine. So, you know, I don't have to just be the lengthy video guy. And it is certainly a lot easier to make a 20-minute video compared to an hour. So, I don't know. Anywho, last night, my family and I, we started Tales of Argosa proper. You know, last week we did a funnel adventure that they all really enjoyed, and so now they have become level 1, moved on with proper characters, and my nephew was absent, so it was just my brother, my mom, and my aunt, 3 players. My mom's playing a fighter, very, very basic. Lego is playing a cultist, as usual. He pretty much exclusively plays like clerics or paladin characters. And then my aunt went with an artificer. She wants a big gun, and who can blame her? It's pretty great. And so I decided to run for them Evils of Ilmire, because it just got a big new update and a new version in print, and I got the print version, and it's pretty fantastic. And there's just a whole lot of fun adventure wrapped up in it. You know, it's not super massive or anything, but it's just a fun, dense hex crawl. And so the main plot of Evils of Ilmire is that an evil cult has taken over the town, and they worship this sort of eldritch, Bloodborne-esque deity called the Fear Mother. And the Fear Mother feeds off of people's fear. So they are like poisoning the well water in town and trying to spread as much fear and paranoia and stuff as possible. And they're, you know, they've taken over like the local militia and everything, and they're a bunch of bandits are masquerading as the militia now, and they're kidnapping people on the road alongside town in order to make new victims for the cult to further feed the Fear Mother. And so there's a bunch of hooks possible to bring people into the adventure. I went with the one where it's like that they have relatives in town and they haven't heard from them in a while. So I said that they were in a nearby bigger city, you know, a couple days away. And they did some shopping there at the start. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, the town of Ilmire is nearby, a couple days away. And I said to my mom that her character's aunt and uncle, Henry and Beatrice, live in Ilmire. And she hasn't heard from them in a while, so they're going to stop in. And they've also heard that there's a lot of treasure in the wilderness surrounding Ilmire, so that's sort of the incentive for the other characters to go along. So they make the couple-day trip, and unlike Weird Wizard, which was very powerful, and I hand-waved a lot of stuff, and blah, 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 here, you know, it's much more OSR, it's much more grounded, and I want to actually keep track of a lot of things. So, rations I'm definitely keeping track of. So they all had to buy rations, and it was a 2-day trek. So they had to tick off a couple days of rations, and we're being much more meticulous about how much they can carry and things like that. And I'm using a... I mean, I don't know really where I took it from. I guess I took it from Axe, sort of. of encumbrance and things like that. And I started it with Shadow Dark, but now I brought it over to Argosa. And that's basically that, you know, you only have a certain number of equipment slots and carry capacity slots that you can take based on your strength. And what we have now is that for every point of AC that your armor provides, it takes up one slot in your inventory. So if you're wearing plate armor, which gives basically +6 AC, that takes up 6 of your slots. And that means that a low strength character is going to struggle to wear plate armor and carry basically anything else. And I think that's all pretty fair. And that's sort of how Axe works. Is every point of armor is another stone of encumbrance. So with that, you know, we're really definitely monitoring carrying capacity pretty closely, and it's a concern. I could tell when they were already shopping that they were getting like, oh man, we can't carry any of this, blah blah blah. And so I said, well, at some point you might want to hire like a porter to carry your stuff around. You know, you might have to give them a share of treasure and stuff if you're going to take them into dungeons. Otherwise, you could just get a mule and, you know, leave it outside the dungeon, things like that. And this is OSR stuff, which I like. So they arrive towards Ilmire, and they see a big circus tent near town along the highway. And they're kind of fascinated by this because they come from a peasant rural village kind of place. They've never seen the circus, but they see that the price to get in is 1 gold. And they're like, well, fuck that, you know, they're not paying that. They're not that interested. And I tell them that they're pretty aware that this is a highly unusual price, and they can see that a lot of people are just walking past and not going in. Like, they would have expected it to be 1 silver, maybe, but 1 gold is kind of outrageous. So they put a pin in that, and they head into town. And that brings me to basically the only major change I'm doing with Evils of Ilmire. In that the cult there utilizes these, like, earworms called mind phages that they're putting into people, certain people, to really turn them into, like, complete servants of the cult. And the module says that the mind phage turns people into essentially mindless, like, drones, you know, mindless, depressed drones. And so they just, you know, move without any emotion, you know, they barely talk or anything like that, you know, they're pretty much mindless. And I thought, that's fine. It's workable. But it's not super creepy, you know? It's kind of what you'd expect. And so I decided to steal from some recent horror movies that I know none of my players have seen. Specifically the Smile movies. And so I changed it to, instead of being mindless drones that just, you know, have no emotion or feeling or anything like that, instead they just smile. And they don't really say anything, and they just smile very creepily. Because the whole point is to spread fear. And I think most people could agree that's pretty creepy. And so they're walking through town. They kind of see that there's just like this kind of air of malaise and depression and fear kind of across the whole town. Like, it's kind of palpable. And it just looks like a sorry place, you know. But then as they're walking, they just see one guy on the side of the road just smiling at them. And they start chatting with him. You know, they're like, oh, you seem pretty happy. Blah, blah. And then he just keeps smiling at them. And, yeah, needless to say, it definitely creeped him out, especially my aunt. She was quite unnerved by this. So mission accomplished. And so they go over to where her aunt and uncle live, my mom's character's aunt and uncle, and they find no one home. And they break into the place and they poke around, and it seems like the two left in a bit of a hurry, like the bed isn't even made, blah blah blah. It looks like, her uncle has been hunting recently, like hunting giant geckos apparently that live nearby and stuff. But yeah, it looks like they both left in some kind of a hurry. But there wasn't really any sign of struggle or anything. And to be honest, none of this is in the module. And I'm not really sure what I want to do with the aunt and uncle yet. So maybe there should have been sign of a struggle, but I didn't want to lay it on that thick just yet. I want there to be some kind of suspicion and doubt that maybe they weren't just abducted, maybe something else happened. I don't know what it is yet. That's not, I don't have to figure that out just yet. But yeah, obviously something happened to them. And I picked a house right next to the big, creepy weeping willow trees nearby. And in the weeping willows, there's a cottage. There's like a tree house. And that's where a druid lives. And we basically said that my mom's character had visited Ilmar a few times in her childhood to visit her aunt and uncle and stuff. And she doesn't remember the town really feeling this oppressed or anything like that. And she does remember this creepy tree, these trees, and she remembers the druid, but she remembers kind of being frightened of him as a child. Like, he was kind of a weird, wild guy. She never spoke to him, but yeah, and she was told that he's basically a good guy and everything, but she was a little scared of him. But they decided to go up in there because, he's a druid, and he lives, like, next door to the aunt and uncle, so maybe he knows what happened. But they go up the tree, and they find the door to the treehouse ajar. And no one's home. So this worries them even more, and they look around a little bit, and they notice a couple things. They notice very faint footprints in the grass at the base of the tree, like rapidly leading out of town. And they also, in the distance, like kind of around the corner of a building, they see a woman smiling at them. I just really wanted to lay it on there. And Lego is just like, this town is lost. This town is fucked. Like he's already given up on the whole town. He's had enough of it, which is really great for a cleric. So they go to the inn and they get a meal at the inn, and the innkeeper there, the barkeeper, whatever, seems to be pretty normal, but she kind of says that there's a lot going wrong with the town with the wilderness, really. She doesn't really mention anything wrong with the town. Just like, she mentions like the frog men and the mantis men and the fish men and the giant geckos, and there's a lot of trouble in the wilderness and blah blah blah. But then, like, my aunt asks about the creepy smiling people, and she's just like, I haven't noticed any of that. And while they're eating their meal, their stew, at the inn, my aunt sees, like, through a door crack at the back of the building, she sees a woman smiling at her. And so they're like, Lego's just like, this whole town is fucked. We gotta get out of here. So of course the barkeeper is a member of the cult and is there to kind of observe anybody that comes in and try and misdirect things and blah, blah, blah. So she's obviously not going to mention any problems with the town itself. So they go out of the inn and they're gonna go follow the footprints out of town. But the last thing they see before they go is like a little kid, like 8 years old or something, sweeping his porch or whatever. And he's like noticeably balding, like he's got clumps of hair falling out, He's got fingernails missing. Like, he's clearly very ill. They try to talk to him, but he's just so paranoid and scared that he just runs into the house and stuff. Because the town, the cultists are poisoning the well water with potions of fear to try and make everyone paranoid and fearful. But it also has a side effect because they make it with quicksilver that it's actually poisoning people and giving them this bald fever. So that's another problem. There's a lot of problems in Ilmire. So they follow the footprints out of town, and they go for a while. And I think it's probably a little ridiculous that they track these footprints this far, but I'm throwing them a pretty big bone because they're being, you know, proactive. They're doing something. They're not just like, I don't know, what should we do? What, you know, they're all like, yeah, let's follow these footprints. Let's do this. So I'm like, fuck it, you know, I'll let them follow the footprints all the way. And so they trek across wilderness. I'm rolling for random encounters, but they roll, you know, they get lucky and they don't really encounter much. And they get to the edge of a forest and the sun is starting to set, so they decide to camp out for the night. And they have no bedrolls, no tent or anything like that. And I probably should have penalized them more because of that, but I was nice. So the night passes by, they consume a ration, so on and so forth. Getting them used to this sort of survival, more grounded mechanics and stuff. And so the next day they trek into the forest, and they trek further and further into the forest. They start getting into a very dark part of the forest. It's covered in spider webs, you know, just spider webs everywhere. But they still soldier on. They're still bold enough to keep going. So good for them. They eventually come to, like, a cavern system filled with spider webbing. And they're brave enough to soldier on. And they go into this cave. And there's clearly a lot of evidence that there's some big spiders around. And they keep going until they encounter this, like, sort of wall of webbing, you know? And they can see that the tunnel continues further on, and the footprints go through the webbing. And I don't really explain how the footprints go through the webbing, or, like, how he passed through the webbing without, you know, disturbing it or anything like that. I just chalked it up to he's a druid, you know, he's fine. He can do stuff like that. Magic. I ain't got to explain shit. They ended up burning the webs. Which, of course, angers a few of the giant spiders that are in the region. And so we got into our first real combat of Tales of Argosa. Against, started with one giant spider, two more joined the fight. And it was looking pretty bad for them. My mom, actually, her left arm got paralyzed, but they happened to have bought a dose of antitoxin. So that saved that. Otherwise, her arm would have been paralyzed for 6 days. Which is quite debilitating. Even though, it's funny, because she specifically has the single weapon style. So she's perfectly fine just having one weapon in her hand and nothing in her other hand. So she would have actually been okay. The best person to have a paralyzed left arm. But yeah, they used the antitoxin. Things were still looking not great, and they were starting to get, you know, their usual kind of defeatist attitude of like, what the fuck are we doing here? This is stupid. Like, I can't believe, like, because basically they hit something and it didn't die instantly. So they're just like, well, woe is me. And they got 2 more spiders coming in. But what saved the day is a major exploit. Because in Tales of Argosa, anytime you hit something, you can do a minor or major exploit, which is pretty much freeform, anything you can kind of think of. You know, if you want to trip them, grab them, throw dirt in their eye, cut off their hand, you know, cut off their leg, or, you know, basically anything you can kind of think of. It can be an exploit. So Lego, pretty much based off my kind of recommendation, since he was in melee with 3 giant spiders, he wanted to just swing his giant flail around and hit all 3 spiders. And so he did the roll and everything for major exploit, blah, blah, blah. And I probably should have made it a little harder than it was, but I was being generous. And so he ended up hitting all 3 spiders for a pretty good amount of damage. And he didn't kill any of them with it, but he bloodied them pretty good, to the point that they basically were able to mop up one of them, and then the other 2 fled, and they died to opportunity attacks, and I gave them a little XP, and they were all very pleased with the encounter. And Lego was like, you know, did you see that? The major exploit basically turned the tide of battle, and it's like, it's just so much RNG. And I'm like, you're playing a fucking tabletop RPG. What did you expect? You know, Lego's always been, throughout our entire childhood and everything, a very sore loser. He's gotten better, but still, he doesn't like when anything doesn't go his way. And if you've ever watched Two Brothers play, probably well aware of that. So it's funny to see him play D&D, which is very, you know, random number based. It's D20s and stuff. It's just like, you gotta accept the dice where they lay. So they continued on, and they, I mean, it's not a, they didn't have to go very far into the cave to find the footsteps leading to, like, this cave wall. And apparently the druid scaled this cave wall. So they followed up, they went up the cave wall, they went through a narrow passageway and everything. And they ended up finding this little secluded, like, shrine with this big stone spider statue. And hiding behind it was the druid. And so they convinced him that they weren't with the cult or anything, that they were here to help and blah, blah, blah. And he basically gave them an exposition dump of what was going on. And he doesn't have full knowledge, thankfully, because otherwise it would kind of spoil everything. But he basically told them that there is an evil cult at work in Ilmire. They're poisoning the town in some way. He didn't know how. So they don't have info that it's the well or the water or anything like that. He just says they're poisoning him somehow, he believes. He knows that there's an assassin after him named Zashara. And he kind of described her appearance to them so they would know what she looks like. And he said that the smiling people are like victims of the cult. And also their poison seems to be actually making people quite ill with this bald fever. He also told them that the priest in the town, Father Rand, is one of the leaders of the cult. He's an evil man. So now they know that he's no good, although they probably would have suspected that anyways. And the temple that is apparently boarded up for renovations is one of their, is like their hideout. They're operating out of the temple. So that's like, you know, a hub. He also told them that the mayor is Lord Krelmont, is probably not with the cult, but he is ill. He's dying. And the druid believes that the mayor's nephew, who stands to take over the town after he dies, is in league with the cult and not to be trusted. And then the last thing he told them is that if they are looking for allies, you know, to help in any sort of battle against the cult, the froglings, the frogmen, would potentially be good, potentially be useful to them. You know, they've always been good to him. He knows they can be trusted. And they are currently kind of at war with the Mantis Men. There's a big tribe of Mantis Men in the area. And so if the players were to take care of the Mantis Men for them, the Froglings would almost certainly become their allies in the war against the cult. So they like to hear that. They're looking for allies for sure. They always want somebody to do their dirty work for them, but, you know, you gotta break a few eggs to make some omelets. And the Mantis Men are not gonna go down easy. It's like 6 feet tall praying mantises. then he let them spend the night there because the shrine area that he's in is protected from the bugs because of this magical amulet on the statue. And you'd think if my nephew were there, he probably would have tried to steal the amulet because he's not a good person. And he likes anything magical, so he probably would have tried to steal the amulet. But they actually were all good, and they gave him some of their rations to help him survive. And he said that he was going to keep kind of researching, you know, he can talk to animals, so he's going to keep trying to surveil the whole region and find out more about the cult's operations. And he would send them like a messenger pigeon or something once he finds out more. Which is basically my excuse where if they're ever like stuck and not sure how to proceed, I can have the druid send a message to help out. He also gave them 2 potions that he had brewed because they came all the way here. I wanted them to leave with some sort of goodies. So he gave them a potion of... Fuck. He gave them a potion of rest, I know, which allows one person to drink it and get the benefits of a long rest. Which in Tales of Argosa is especially good, because that's basically 7 days of resting. It's pretty significant. Fuck, what was the other one? Oh, it was a potion of tongues that allows them to communicate in any language for 4 hours. Because presumably they were going to try to treat with the froglings, so he figured that that would help them a lot, and it would. It definitely would. And then they took a separate passage out of the cavern, because they asked if there was any safer way out of here other than the way they came in. And I thought about it, and the module didn't mention it at all, but I was like, yeah, alright, fine. So I needed a reason that he didn't take that passage, and that's because it's a very winding, lengthy passage that dumps out like an hour to the north or something, but it was safe. And so they dumped out in another part of the forest near a massive magical tower, a very tall tower, and a big chunk of the tower is missing in the middle of it. So it's floating like unsuspended, just in midair, you know. So it's obviously very magical. And that's where we ended for the session. They're near this weird tower. They've got the mantis men nearby. They got the froglings nearby. And I think that they're going to be focused on trying to deal with the froglings and mantis men first before doing anything else. And the frog, you know, if they deal with the mantis men, yeah, the froglings will become their ally. But they still have to have a plan. It's not like they can just say to the froglings, okay, go deal with the cult for us. Or you can't just say, okay, go march on Ilmire or something like that. Like, you still have to have a plan of what to do with the froglings. And that's usually where they struggle. But so far they enjoyed it, and Tales of Argosa is a really good system. Evils of Ilmire is a good module. So I've got pretty good hopes for this working out. We'll see. Alright, that's about it then. So, more Monster Hunter Wilds, of course, more solo role-manging, some more split fiction, and over on the Exploring series, part 5 of Black Adatum. A shorter part, only about like 40 minutes, but that's because part 6 will be quite lengthy. For now, though, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.